Welcome, fellas, to the 11.2 official Meta Mythic Plus tier list. This is going to be the best tier list that you have ever seen in your life, the most objectively correct tier list. This is the only tier list that you will need probably until at least a month into the season. You might ask me, how am I qualified to do a tier list like this? Well, I'm not. But since everyone is doing them, and since everyone is entitled to their opinion, then I am too. Before you cry about your main being dogshit and should be deleted from the game, all of these specs are completely playable. I think all of us should know this at this point. Every single spec in the game is playable to a pretty damn high level. Even the worst of the worst specs this season were still capable of timing plus 18s, I'm pretty sure. And the world's max key right now on live is plus 22s. So regardless of what you play, as long as you're a good player, you will absolutely make it work no matter what. But let's waste no more time, because I assume we're probably gonna be here for at least like an hour and a half. So starting off with the DK class, okay? Blood DK over here. Can you guess where this spec is going before I even say anything? C, F tier. Okay, yes. Blood DK is easily the worst tank in the game. Okay, I'm gonna put this guy straight into C tier. Blood DK is simply ass. The spec has received basically no changes. I think it was one of the least changed specs in season 3. It is insanely fucking squishy. It is the squishiest tank in the entire game. You probably played with like a million BDKs in your life, and they sometimes just fucking drop dead. This is a very big problem, especially in hierarchies. They'll struggle to simply live through them. That's just kind of how it works, okay? You could argue that it has some of the important utility that the DPS DKs have. The only issue is that both of these are actually so strong next season. It's just simply a waste to put it on BDK, especially when much stronger and more versatile tanks exist. So yeah, I think Blood DK easily deserves a spot in the C tier. Next up, Frost DK. Today, they got some nerfs, okay? I have expressed this once, I'm gonna express it again. I do not think this matters. They are still incredibly good. They perform very well. They have insane prio damage. They have insane AoE. They also have some insane single target. This spec basically has every single damage profile under planet Earth. Aside from that, they are basically unkillable. It is, along with Unholy, one of the most unkillable DPS in the entire game, and a good DK is never ever gonna die in a key. I'm not gonna go back on my word. I think DK has shit utility. The problem is that this season is borderline catered to the class. Grips are incredibly useful in dungeons like Priory, and AMS is incredibly useful also in dungeons like Priory, and a couple of others, even Floodgate. They have situational utility. The only problem is that the situation is now. That's the easiest way that I would put it. Unholy DK, getting kinda overshadowed, although I think many people are sleeping on it, because Frost is like so insanely OP, or at least was, that people think that Unholy is like a bad spec by any means. I personally do not think Unholy is a bad spec at all. They also did cap the spec, so there's that. And one thing that Frost does much better than Unholy is single target. I mean, like, the difference is crazy high. Oh yeah, another thing that I should have mentioned probably is that the nerfs and buffs that we have gotten today, we don't know the numbers on them yet, so you can only just kind of like, you can't really tell. So you just have to do some head math. For example, Unholy got a 20% death coil nerf today, and I don't know how much their single target is going to struggle after that. But yeah, they also did get some nerfs to Sand Lane. Fucking maybe A tier is better for them. What do you think? Let's keep it at an A, just because there's like no reason to play this spec if Frost DK exists. A is good? Yeah, A is good. A is just like the middle tier. If your spec is in A, you should be happy. You should be glad. It also means that you are less vulnerable to nerf. A is just a good tier. This was the DK, okay? Now you move on to the Demon Hunter. First of all, Havoc Demon Hunter. This spec is still slept on. I feel like whenever this spec is good, it is always slept on. This spec does some fucking crazy ass funnel. The only problem that I would personally have with Havoc is that it kind of lacks mass AoE, I think. Maybe I'm just personally bad at the spec, especially in those like Bloodlust pulls, super big ass pulls with like fucking 20-25 targets, whatever. It really does get outclassed by like multiple other specs in the game. But at the end of the day, if you can compensate for that with the funnel, I don't think that matters at all. You could also make the argument that it's overshadowed by Vengeance, which is true. Yes, Vengeance is going to be very good, spoiler alert. But the fact that we have multiple very meta and incredibly strong tanks this season automatically makes the spec much better than it was before. Another cool thing is that you still provide your brand, right? So when you're not playing with Vengeance, you still have a source of magic damage for the rest of the team. The raid buff is just awesome. So yeah, Havoc is a super slept on spec. I think it's very nice, goes into A+, in my opinion. There is no other place for Havoc right now. It is very strong. Don't sleep on it. Vengeance, I think we all know that this is coming. I'm just gonna plop it straight there. Vengeance is an S tier spec. It has basically not been changed since season 2. It got a tiny parry nerf today, but it did also get some damage buffs. Unless Blizzard does something about the utility kit of Vengeance, it will permanently be S tier. Yeah, my only thing is that Vengeance would be squishy at the start of packs, that is true, but even then I think it's a lot less squishy than BDK, and with good gameplay you will never be dying on the spec. And maybe a little bit of healer help, especially in hierarchies. You don't really need healer help in whatever piss low keys that I play personally, which are like plus 14s. Vengeance, good, very strong level of Vengeance if you want to tank in season 3. But yeah, next up, the Druid. Okay, balanced Druid. As we know, tier set was insanely fucking broken when the season came out, and when something is broken on the PTR, it tends to get completely obliterated unless you're maybe like a mage. So that is exactly what happened, and balanced Druid got a humongous fucking nerf to their tier set. This was followed by an 8% aura nerf. That didn't really help the spec that much. Don't get me wrong, this spec is not unviable by any means. It's not like fucking C tier, okay? When you're playing in ranged comps, when you're playing in magic comps, it also provides a soothe, which is pretty fucking helpful. Okay, listen, my thing is that a lot of people don't know that this spec can funnel. It is actually a funnel spec. The issue is that people who play the spec are usually incredibly retarded and stupid, and they just spam Starfall. They don't know that you can funnel with the spec. If you do the exact same rotation, the only thing that changes is you press Star Surge. So for all of these reasons, and the fact that it's still a pretty competitive, it still has pretty competitive damage, a shit ton of utility, I don't think it deserves to go into B tier. It is like fully playable and decent. Next up, Pharaoh Druid. All I'm gonna say, season 3 is the season of the physical. Okay, we're gonna talk about that more when we get to some of the other big dogs like Brewmaster and whatnot, and Outlaw. This spec unironically fucking pumps. The mass AoE is crazy. Dotting means uncapped. Uncapped means good. It also got some single target buffs today. I'm not sure if they will be negligible or not, but Pharaoh was kind of struggling in single target. That was like the biggest downside. Another thing is that Pharaoh funnels like crazy. I don't think it's as strong as like some of the other big dogs like Havoc and Arcane Mage and whatnot, but it's still funnels. You're a Druid at the end of the day. You know, you have the same with balanced Druid and Feral. You have BRS, you have Soothe, even like some decent mob control, you know. Mark goes crazy as well. Versatility, also yes. Spec is just fucking good. Like, there is no other place to put it than in A+. Also. Next up, Guardian Druid. Bear was looking okay, as it usually does, and then Blizzard happened, and we got a nerf that was presented as a bug fix, and for a little bit of time, this spec would be like above Blood Decay. This doesn't mean it's not tanky. The spec itself is insanely tanky. Bear is one of the tankiest tanks in the entire game. The massive problem with Bear that it has had for a very long time now is that it is inferior to every single other tank in the game in terms of mob control, which is a massive thing for a tank. Bear realistically has 2 CC abilities. Every spec in the game has more CC than Bear. Bear was also doing some big doo-doo damage, and then it got a 12% aura nerf for the damage. That was kind of huge for the spec. The damage itself, in my personal opinion, made it a little better than it is, to the point where it matters. I am gonna put B for Bear. Okay, next spec, Resto Druid. This spec is a pumper in healer form. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of this, but Resto Druids were timing some of the highest keys in the world this season. Tell me 2 words why they are timing crazy high keys, even though this season they would be considered like a B tier spec. Why are they timing plus 22s? And that's gonna be one of the reasons why Resto Druid is insanely fucking strong, and I'm gonna tell you another reason, okay? Pumps numbers, but it's shit to play. Yeah, that's a bit more than 2 words, but yes, Jack, you are correct. Resto has the highest constant HPS in the game. This season, although it has been done now, I think, there are some disc priests that have timed DFC on a plus 22. Before those super good discs timed it, a Resto Druid was necessary for those keys. Consistent healing profile, exactly. Resto has insane HPS output, and when you're good at the spec, you can do some absolutely crazy babysitting, and that's point number 2. You're gonna notice a bit of a pattern in this tier list, which is is that the tank meta decides a lot of the healer meta and DPS meta as well. Tanks are like the biggest meta catalyst in this game. And so the second reason why Resto Druid, in my opinion, is gonna be insanely fucking good, possibly rivaling Disc the entire time until it gets nerfed, is because it is incredibly good at babysitting tanks that need to be babysat. And funnily enough, Vengeance does need a little bit of babysitting in hierarchies. So that is tank number one. That is S tier right now. Another tank that we're gonna get to, which is also surprisingly strong, a big surprise, is Brewmaster over here. Brewmasters need a shit ton of babysitting. Their sustain has gotten better, I'm gonna get to that, but still, Resto is insanely fucking good spec to deal with tanks like this. For that reason, I am gonna be putting Resto into S tier. Resto is cracked. Next of all, the worst class in the game, okay? The Evoker. So, Augmentation Evoker. I'm not sure if you've been noticing what they've been doing with Augmentation, but as time goes on, Blizzard has finally realized that they cannot balance a supportive DPS spec, which is fair. It's a good decision on their part, and they are trying to make Aug into its own DPS. They are doing a lot more damage than they did in Season 2, especially. But the problem is that the damage still is shit. As for the team utility, it does have some pretty nice team utility, right? Except the raid buff is pretty fucking useless. I absolutely hate Evoker raid buff. The defensives for the team are kind of negligible at this point, because you can just get a different spec that will replace the DPS, have a much better DPS profile, and also rival the utility of the spec. Aug is simply not needed, and it basically doesn't fit anywhere, in my opinion, in this season. But all things considered, I think we should put Augmentation Evoker into C tier, just because it deserves it. Historically. Okay, now this is one of the specs that I wasn't really sure how to rank previously. The Devastation Evoker. Devastation does absolutely fucking insane AoE. No one can dispute that. The AoE on this spec is crazy. There are maybe a handful of specs in the game that can out-damage this guy in large packs. As I have seen, the single target is, I would say, decent maybe. Decent to pretty good. As Kitty said though, the spec has a horrible damage profile. It has 0 prio damage whatsoever. It is purely pad. That being said, I don't think the overall damage is bad, right? Should we put it above Bear? Maybe we should put it above Bear. When we're gonna get to the end of this tier list, most of the specs in the lower tiers are probably gonna be there because they have a horrible damage profile. I don't know, if Blizzard wants to fix that, then fucking make all of the specs do some fun or something. Put Press in the who cares tier? Okay, we're going to Press. Believe it or not, this spec got better. It got some changes in Season 3. The thing about Press is that Press has like 0 spot healing whatsoever. All of its healing relies on very high burst AoE healing. And when you're trying to spot heal someone, you are automatically losing an AoE tool. And that is insanely problematic, as I have expressed before, because of the existence of tanks like VDH and Brewmaster being at the top. And I think that is extremely problematic, even though the spec can heal some high keys. The healing itself is not bad. I am also personally more inclined to put it into B tier. I don't think the spec is like BDK level of bad. That was the dragon. Onto the hunter. We have BM Hunter. Spec was looking hella sexy, and then the spec literally got 4 consecutive nerfs. BM was at the early stages of PTR, bound to be one of the best physical comp members in this entire game, and now it is as mediocre as always. I still think that it is better than last season. It is not like piss low, completely bad, but I think B tier is fair for it now. Next up, MM Hunter. This spec got giga nerfed today. Once again, just like BM, before this nerf, I would still consider it to be an S tier spec. Now, unfortunately, it is probably not going to be doing the highest DPS in the game anymore. And so what that means is the spec will probably be getting outclassed by many other specs, both in the S tier and also in the A+ tier. So my question is, do you guys think even after these nerfs, it will still be doing like a giga damage enough for it to be an A+, or do we put it into A tier? Don't forget guys, this spec has been giga busted before. I'm starting to feel like survival is becoming better, so yeah, I think I'm gonna put it into A tier. Above balance, below unholy. Next up, Survival Hunter, the underdog, the Crayon Eater spec. People don't like this spec, but regardless of if you like it or not, similarly to Havoc, Survival is incredibly slept on. It has pretty damn good AoE, it has really good single target. The biggest thing about Survival is the consistency. You are constantly doing damage on the spec. Your cooldown is on a 1 minute cooldown, which is incredibly low. I don't think the spec is up there with like Frost Decay and all the other like top crazy dogs in terms of performance. It will will be out damaged, but at the end of the day, you have some cool stuff. You have actually a lot of mob control as a hunter, which applies to both of the other specs as well. And also, most of your damage is magic, but the fact that you're melee means you're profiting more from the other buffs that don't specifically boost physical damage. The thing about specs like Unholy, Frost Decay, Survival, Havoc, etc., even Enhancement, is that they profit from 3 different things, okay? They profit from Warrior's buff, which every single melee DPS profits from. They profit from Chaos Brand because they do a shit ton of magic damage, so they're getting buffed by either a Vengeance or a Havoc. And they also profit from Wind Fury from the Shamans. The fact that Survival does mostly magic damage already makes it like much better than like MM, which is ranged and doesn't profit from the other buffs. I am gonna put it into A+. I think it deserves to be above Pharaoh Druid right now. Here's where I'm gonna put it. Very, very strong spec. Until it gets nerfed, then I think it might be the best hunter spec out of the 3. Next up, the mages. Arcane Mage. This guy has been evading nerfs for way too long, and it has been so long at this point that it will simply not fall out of the meta. The interesting thing that happened with Arcane Mage is that usually when a spec is OP the entire fucking season, it gets nerfed, similarly to like Unholy Decay maybe or Balanced Druid. Arcane Mage, unironically, got stronger than it already was. It is even more fucking insane. Single target damage is insane. AoE damage has gotten a lot better. Funnel damage is single-handedly the best in the game. We all know how Arcane Mage funnels. It goes at the very top of S tier. I'm gonna put it here. Definitely better than Frost. Okay, Fire Mage. Another sort of BM Hunter example. Fire Mage was incredibly good to the point where it was even competing with Arcane for the S tier spot and could be preferable in some of the dungeons as a spec. And then about 3 or maybe even 4 nerfs happened. Today, Fire got another nerf, if you didn't know. It got a 3% aura nerf and also a 15% flame strike nerf. It has gotten worse over time. Initially, I would put it into S tier. Then maybe 2 weeks ago, I would put it into A+. Then last week, before the huge mastery nerfs, I would put it somewhere at the top of A. And with today's nerfs, this spec is so incredibly far behind, especially considered that both of its counterparts are a lot higher, that this spec is unironically kind of shit. At the end of the day, you still do have your mage utility, all of that stuff, you know, yup. I know this might sound crazy, but I am inclined to have it at the top of B. I don't think Fire Mage deserves A anymore after the amount of nerfs that it has gotten. Frost Mage. It is much stronger than it was in Season 2. In Season 2, it has been the absolute underdog. It was very mediocre. I made a short where I discussed the class changes last week. And funnily enough, Frost Mage got the best out of the bunch. It got the hero talent nerf slightly, but it got the 10% aura buff. Before I was debating if that's gonna help the spec be meta or not, it absolutely did. Again, the only problem between Frost Mage and its counterparts is that it has a significantly worse damage profile. Both Fire and Arcane are known to have crazy high prio damage, which Frost does not really have. It is a lot easier in Cleave. You can weave in some Glacial Strikes. It does not result in like this crazy high damage loss. You can weave those in and do some prio damage. In that way, Frost is still inferior to the other 2 specs, but it is easily stronger than Fire, in my opinion, and I think it will be doing some very good keys. Again, should we put it into A+, or should we put it at the very top of A tier? A+, A+++, bottom A+, you guys have convinced me, okay. Frost Mage goes to the bottom of A+ tier. Now we head to the Monk class, Brewmaster. Possibly the most interesting spec going into Season 3. It got a mini rework. I will not call it a rework because that's not what it is. They literally changed like 3 talents, okay? That is not what a rework is. The spec is a lot more sustainable than before, which means it also needs less healing than it did before. This, of course, doesn't really matter because Resto Druid is an incredibly good healer and will be in the meta. One thing that is particularly bonkers, bananas, even about the spec is the damage. It has the best single target DPS in the game. It has the best 2 target DPS out of any tank in the game, I'm pretty sure also. So Brew is crazy. It's tankier, it has way more sustain. Brewmaster is insanely good. I personally think that Brewmaster deserves to be at the very top of A+. Mistweaver. This is a pretty booty cheeks healer. Historically, Mistweaver is not a very good healer. In Mythic Plus, it has been meta for maybe like 2 seasons, not even fully. Mistweaver doesn't really excel in anything in particular, except maybe AoE healing while it's inside a big pack of mobs, which is like a pretty specific condition to be in. But overall, Mistweaver is quite weak, which is very disappointing. In going into Season 2, Mistweaver looked like it was going to be great, and then it simply wasn't great, got a shit ton of nerfs, and it's kind of happening all over again in Season 3, except it wasn't even ever good in the first place. Another thing is that it can be pretty useful in physical comps when Brew is not there, but the fact that Brew exists kind of means that you have to play with a Prot Warrior or a Bear, which in itself you are already slightly nerfing yourself in my opinion. Yeah, it also struggles to heal your team on bosses, so in single target fights, Mistweaver really struggles because you get a lot less value out of your damage healing and also your Crackling Jade. Oh, by the way, Mistweaver got some nerfs today as well. I didn't say this, but it got some nerfs to the tier set, which further so, I think before I would have put the spec maybe like fucking like right here, and now it has gotten haste nerfs from the tier set, so like yeah, go in the beefer booty. Windwalker Monk. This spec is an eternal tragedy, and nothing has changed in Season 3. Spec was okay at best before today, and today it has gotten some very crazy nerfs. I'm not sure if this is true or not, but I have seen someone in the comments say that overall, today's change has resulted in an 8% overall nerf to Windwalker. If the spec was okay before, then where would you put this fucking dogshit ass spec? I would put Windwalker at the top of C tier. Windwalker is simply ass. It is by far the worst monk spec you could include in a physical comp, in my opinion. But yeah, that was the monk class. We're kind of going through this now. I thought it would take longer. We're gonna go through the paladins now, okay? Let's start off with the Holy Paladin. I have big trouble of placing this spec because I rarely ever play with them. I have not played with them at all on PTR. I have only seen a couple of them on maybe YouTube keys. Spec has kind of the same issue as Mistweaver in that it needs sustained melee to generate holy power.
Are you sure?
It is a very big downside, although I think it has a higher range than Mistweaver, which automatically makes it better in my opinion. It has gotten some very nice buffs today. In terms of spec strength, I shouldn't like place it randomly, but I have heard people say this spec simply lacks the healing capability sometimes. It does not have as many cooldowns, it does not have as many tools as some of the other healers have. But overall, I think it's better than Mistweaver, genuinely, especially after today's nerf. So yeah, we're gonna keep it in B. Protection Paladin. I think Prot Paladin is the most coped about spec in the entire PTR. I have seen Yoda put it into the top of S tier. It is true that Protection Paladin is a lot better than it was previous season. Previous season it was absolutely booty cheeks, dog shit, but it has gotten better mostly because of the dungeon pool and how much value you get out of Prot Paladin being there. That being said, it is insanely fucking squishy. I would personally call Protection Paladin the second squishiest tank in the game. It is very hard to live on, it is very hard to survive on. You need a shit ton of babysitting, especially when you're a bit worse at the spec, and by no means do I think that Protection Paladin belongs in the S tier, purely because of the survivability alone, regardless of the utility. I am gonna put Prot at the top of A. I think utility, especially this season in dungeons like Arakara, they cannot be overlooked. In terms of defensives, it is a bit more defensive than last season because it had like a crazy damage exploit, and they did fix that, but in return, they have gotten some very decent nerfs to their defensives. So the spec is a bit tankier than before, but I still think that it does not deserve to be anywhere near here because of the survivability. You need a good prot pal to make it work, yeah. Yeah, that's true. Next up, Retribution Paladin. Spec was mediocre, then the player base, the infamous Retribution player base started crying. The spec got buffed, and then completely unprecedented, the spec got some crazy buffs today as well. It got a 10% Divine Storm buff, it got like a fucking, I don't know, 15% Wake of Ashes buff or something. It is now, once again, the same pumperette that we have known in the Season 2. They always like to do this for some fucking reason. Please stop, Blizzard. I would put it maybe at the bottom of A+. At least for now, we still don't know how much the buffs have actually impacted it. Next up, Discipline Priest. So we're gonna put this spec in the S tier before even saying anything, because that's just how the spec works right now. Disc is basically just as strong as it was in Season 2. It had a couple of nerfs to the shields, but they ultimately did absolutely nothing to the spec. Disc above Resto. I'd say Resto is better. Do we think that Resto is better? You can't heal Swamp Phase with PTR Disc, by the way, on a hierarchy. Yeah, that's where Resto comes in for sure. That's a good point. I do think that Resto is super fucking strong now. You kind of had the edge before. Resto? Okay, you know what? Sure. That's what you guys are here for. Yes, this Discipline goes behind Resto. I agree with that. Oh, Holy Priest. In my personal opinion, this is the worst healer going into Season 3. The problem isn't that it's undertuned necessarily or anything. The spec can still heal. The problem with Holy Priest is that it is the most general spec in the game, and the issue with that is that it has no strengths as a spec whatsoever. Every single healing profile, every single thing, AoE healing, single target healing, babysitting, there are probably going to be at least 2 healers in the game that can do it better than Holy Priest. Also, with the fact that Shadow is going to be really strong, that we're going to get to in a minute, and the fact that this priest is incredibly strong, Holy Priest is incredibly ass as a spec, and it does not belong basically anywhere. I'm going to put it at the very bottom of C tier. This might be even the worst spec in the game. Shadow Priest, the DPS priest. Initially, Shadow got nerfed, right? It was super strong. I would put it like into A+ tier maybe, or maybe even S tier. Shadow was really strong, okay? Then the spec got nerfed, and once again, on the last, not the last patch, not like today's patch, but in last week's patch, it has gotten a huge AoE buff, okay? I think the buff came out to roughly 15% in AoE, which was traded in for like a 5% nerf in ST, but it doesn't matter because Priest is still pumping a lot in a single target. It is a big single target pumper, so it doesn't really matter. For that reason, since it's still very strong, it is definitely, I could see Shadow Priest even being played in the God comp when the disc is not present. I would put Shadow Priest at somewhere at the top of A+. Possibly like right here next to Brewmaster. Very strong spec right now. Maybe in the Magic comp it could replace Boomy. Yeah, definitely. Arcane, S Priest, FDK, VDH, Dudu. Yeah, I can see that. I think this may be the actual God comp. Entirely possible after what they have done to balance Druid. But yeah. Now the rogue specs. Once again, all 3 of the rogue specs have gotten some big buffs and nerfs today, so it's gonna be a little difficult to place them. Assassination. Massive buffs today. Mufin has told me he has delayed the information from Shindig that Fatebound Assassination Rogue had about a 12% overall buff today. It was kind of mediocre before and very poor in single target without funnel. That's Assassination's biggest problem. I think that Assassination is gonna have a little bit of a harder time fitting into the meta, not because it's bad, but because there are so many other specs that are very similar to it and do a bit more damage maybe, and also have a bit more tools, okay? A bit more utility. We're gonna put Assassination at in A tier towards the top. Once again, Outlaw got some what looked like very crazy buffs today. It got buffs to both of the hero talents. In addition to that, it also got a 3.5%, I think it was, aura buff, and Killing Spree I think was also buffed. This spec you will have to play it in a physical comp. There's like no way around that, I think. But the question is, are there better specs to put into a physical comp outside of Outlaw? I don't really think so. I think Outlaw may genuinely be at the bottom of A+ at least. I think it's safe here. Subtlety Rogue. Now this is not rage bait opinion. Subtlety Rogue is by far the worst rogue spec in Season 3. Well, not really a problem, but the thing about Subtlety is that once again it does a shit ton of magic damage, yet it is melee. So first of all, no physical comp for you, and second of all, you will be vastly outnumbered and outgunned by many of the magical melee specs that are present right here, such as Havoc, Survival, etc, FDK. For that reason, once again, there is zero place whatsoever for Subtlety Rogue in any composition whatsoever. It will always be outnumbered, outgunned. If you are playing the spec, you are fucking trolling. Should we put it at the very bottom? Is it worse than Holy Priest? Possibly it is, because like when you're a Holy Priest, at least you're a fucking healer at the end of the day. At least you can do things. You know what? Fuck it. Subtlety, one of the worst specs in the game currently, in my opinion. Elemental Shaman. The tier set was incredibly good for the spec. As an Elemental main, I can confidently say that. The biggest problem in Season 2 with Elemental, well actually the 2 biggest problems were that first of all, it does kind of struggle similarly to Assassination, in that it does basically 0 single target without funnel, and second of all, the damage profile is incredibly random. Elemental is one of the most RNG specs in this entire game, which means that outside of your 2 or 3 minute CDs, based on which one you're running, your damage is going to be completely RNG. There will be packs where you're going to be doing tank damage and packs where you will do some competitive damage. Now, it has gotten buffed in single target, and it is actually pretty damn decent in SC2. It is not up here with the Shadow Priest and whatnot, but it is not Dockwater like it was before. Because of the fact that Elemental has huge uncapped AoE, actually very decent cleave, You have very, very strong funnel, one of the strongest in the game, and you also do less RNG damage. Elemental has turned out, going all the way from maybe B tier, in my personal opinion, it has gotten up to the A+ tier. It has climbed here very quickly, above survival, below havoc. Maybe the only issue would be that some range specs are better to include. It's a little bit awkward to fit inside the comp, I'm not gonna lie. That's the biggest problem with Elemental, but still, as a caster, very, very strong spec. Enhancement Shaman. It has gotten some bug fixes for Totemic lately, which is nice, but I still think that Stormbringer is gonna be better. It has a similar problem like Elemental. It is very, very RNG, but overall, I think it has a more consistent damage profile than Elemental, and also I think it has stronger ST still after the buffs. That is not fact check though, do not quote me on that, but I think it's still a little bit stronger. Yeah, it kind of doesn't fit with Brew. You have to take Warrior, Resto, Enhancement, FDK, and like Havoc maybe? Is that the plan? I don't know, I feel like there are so many compounding reasons for why this spec is like a bit worse than Elemental and most of the specs here. I'm gonna put it below Prod Paladin for now. I think that's okay for the spec. Restoration Shaman, incredibly strong healer. Farseer got some big buffs, and it is now possibly looking even better than Totemic. It makes the spec a little harder, but that doesn't really matter here, does it? Healing is crazy, consistent healing is crazy. Spot healing is not the best, no. I think Resto is like a tiny bit weaker in like the way that you need to like spam cast a lot. I don't know, maybe that's just like a troll opinion, but whatever. Overall, good healer, utility is crazy. You're gonna be very good into Protection Warrior comps. I would put it at the very top of A+, possibly even above Brewmaster. Let's put it there. 2 more classes to go, guys. 2 more classes to go. So for the Warlock class, first of all, we have Affliction. Affliction was looking pretty cool. It did get some very, very important buffs actually. They made the damage profile even better. In Season 2, it used to be a funnel spec, but it was not really anywhere near as strong as like Ellie and Havoc or Arcane Mage. And they did buff the funnel damage, the prio damage that you do. They buffed the Haunt by a lot, and they also buffed a couple other abilities. And now Affliction is much better at funneling, so that's like really cool. Uncapped AoE is very strong, although I think you still get like out DPS by some shit, right? Fucking even like Dev is gonna do more damage in Uncapped. Single target without funnel is a little bit on the weaker side. Affliction struggles a little with a single target in M+, which is a big problem. Like the overall isn't bad. I think the spec does, you know what, fuck it. We're gonna put it above Devastation here. I think that's a fair placement for the spec. Despite what many people might think, Affliction has gotten better since Season 2. Affliction pretty strong, is just that at the end of the day you are a Warlock, so you have some faults, and the damage, despite having some better damage, it's still not as good. Okay, that's enough yapping about a mediocre spec. Next up, Demonology Warlock. You have some decent AoE on the spec, and the single target is crazy. I think the single target is still the highest amongst all of the Warlock specs, but I think that Destruction is like overall just better now. The issue with the demo is that it hasn't really gotten any substantial or meaningful changes for like any of its gameplay or the damage profile in Season 3. Oh yeah, you have one big plus about the spec, I guess, is that if you're playing lower keys, demo is superior in lower keys. Unless you're at least in like +15s, +16s, demo is gonna be the clear option, because both Affliction and Destruction quite heavily rely on the pack living a bit longer to do your damage. So that is the thing. But in hierarchies, I think both of the specs unironically might have the advantage now. The only question is mass AoE more important than single target? I think I'm gonna go with the single target. You know what? Demonology is gonna go above Affliction. The only reason I'm putting it higher is because I think these two specs are basically equal in how well they fit and how good they are as a spec. Last of all, Destro Warlock. I think that Destro is gonna be the king of Warlocks in hierarchies this season. One of the things about Season 3 is that there are so many humongous uncapped pulls in there. We have some massive pulls, and Destro is perfect for those. It does some crazy AoE damage. Even after the nerfs today, they should not be substantial, and the single target, it was quite lacking that before, but today it has gotten a 20% nerf to Chaos Bolt. So a pretty decent single target buff there, and after these changes, I think it will be the best Warlock spec for hierarchies. I'm gonna put it at the very, very bottom of A tier. I think at least one Warlock spec deserves to be at A, otherwise people are gonna be mad. So yeah, that's where it goes. I need to spray my throat again. I'm not used to yapping this much, guys.
Are you sure?
Yes. These specs that you have all been waiting for. The Warrior class. Arms and Fury Warrior. Now, this season, Fury Warrior has been in the absolute gutter, and Arms was maybe like a top of B tier spec, possibly A tier. This is where I go from an unbiased objective tier list to maybe rage bait for multiple people. First of all, no matter how much damage these guys are gonna do, unless they do complete booty cheeks gutter damage, basically in any physical comp where a warrior isn't present, they are gonna be there. One of these is gonna be there. Let's talk about the damage a little. Warrior has gotten some significant buffs, at least for their standards, in the last patch. Arms has gotten some buffs, and I think Fury Warrior has gotten some even more significant buffs. Arms Warrior is always going to be stronger in mass AoE. Fury is hard capped to 5 targets. This is the biggest weakness of the spec. These two are actually pretty close to each other, and I think that Arms is going to be played in a couple of dungeons, especially with some bigger pulls, and then Fury is going to be played in other dungeons where the pulls are not so big. For example, like Dawnbreaker, Streets maybe. Streets has some like tiny ass pulls. Fury is going to be a superior spec there. And in those runs where the pulls are small, especially, it can actually be a very competitive DPS and can keep up with some of the other specs in physical comps. It is actually decent. You may have thought before this tier list I'm gonna plop these right into C tier, like fucking below Windwalker. No, I do not think that. I am gonna be putting both of the warriors at the bottom of B tier. You know what, fuck it, I genuinely think that Fury is better. And because Fury also has a better single target than Arms. Warrior is not going to be played. You are wrong, my friend, you are wrong. I disagree with you. I think Warrior will be played in every comp where a protection is not present if it's physical. Listen, Fury was a lot worse than it is now in Season 2, and it was already being played. Because, once again, you can see how much meta we have defined, how many of the DPS specs are placed where, not because of the damage, but because of the existence of this fucker and this fucker right here. Last spec, the Protection Warrior. A very similar story to Brewmaster. They have gotten a lot of help in Season 3. One of the most substantial things that they have gotten, they are now able to self-sustain. Previously, Protection Warrior had zero self-healing whatsoever. It was quite reliant on the healer when it wasn't doing its mitigation. Now that has changed, and Protection Warrior can actually sustain some damage now. Also, the damage is incredibly strong. I think second highest DPS tank in the game, aside from Brewmaster. I think that's what it is right now. Single target is really strong. AoE is super strong. They are tanky as shit, a little bit vulnerable to magic damage and also to one-shots. Its spell reflect or whatever the name is called got removed from the game. But I think the tankiness compensates for that, and I am gonna confidently put them into A+ here. I'm gonna put it below Brewmaster though, for sure. Overall, I think Warriors actually eating somewhat okay this season. They are not starving. No famine for the Warriors, only like a little bit. But we're gonna call it like food stamps, okay? Food stamps for Warriors. But yes, this is the tier list, ladies and gentlemen. If you're watching from YouTube or from TikTok, please let me know if you disagree with any of the placements. The tier list is subject to change. The reason I wanted to do it today is because today was, I believe, the last major patch with big changes in it. And we may get one more rebalance, maybe when the patch drops or something. But I don't think any massive important changes are going to be made until the race to World First finishes. So that is what I wanted to do today. People have been doing that for a while. I didn't really see the point in it very much. So yeah, we're just going to make one tier list that I think is going to work for at least like the next 1.5 months, in my opinion. But yeah, let me know if you enjoyed it. Let me know if this ranking is good. Hope you enjoyed it. And now I guess we're gonna review Kitty's tier list. And after that, I'm gonna see if I'm gonna continue streaming or just go sleep.